Yo, what's up? This is cool, man.
Isn't this awesome, dude?
Yeah, this is the best.
I was so excited when they added this feature. Like, you've been able to do this on like Instagram for a little while now.
Oh, okay. I'm never on Instagram, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I'm hardly ever on anymore either. I only have one that's still active because I made it when I thought that they might be shutting down TikTok. But Jeremiah, the Black Doctor, I guess that's his name on TikTok. Him and Andrew Apologetics and Noel, we four get on like every Tuesday ish and do like a live.
Huh. Can you more than one? Or is it just
Yeah, you can do like, well, I don't know if you can do more than four, but we've been doing like four. Four
that's cool.
Yeah, going live with four people at once, it's pretty cool.
I thought this was it. I didn't know it could get even more lit.
Yeah. On Instagram, you can do up to four people for sure. I don't know if you can do any more than that, but for sure you can do four.
Huh. I need to be on Instagram more for this. No one, none of my followers here have followed me on Instagram. So I mean, because I don't.
Well, okay. So, do you have a separate Instagram for alternate media like I do? Okay.
I should probably make one.
Yep.
So I know you can't see. I can't see your comments, and you can't see mine.
Right.
But I just got a question from. Can you eat a cheese? Are you allowed to eat a cheeseburger? Fernando ALV23. And then immediately, Frozen Mechanics.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
What's up, Brad?
Yeah, he's on. That's what's up. And I also see that Buck Rogers is on. Hey.
Nice.
Yeah, they're on my account. Haha, I'm the favorite.
Screw you guys. You guys suck.
But to the cheeseburger thing, actually, this is one of those weird areas where you and I have like different approaches to.
Pretty much, yeah. This is one of the only areas that there are so few where we don't exactly have the exact same approach.
Well, like, yeah, yeah. There are very few. This is one. And it's like kind of the only one that I can think of, actually, off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't know that I can really think of any more.
I mean, we used to disagree on a lot of things, but since then, we've put a lot of time and years into study, and so it's very rare that we often find.
I think the Nephilim used to be one of those, actually. I remember we sat and had a long discussion, like 4-hour discussion. This was back when we were living with Mom and Dad.
Yeah, and we broke open all the books and everything, and eventually we both like found information we both didn't know, and we were like, "Huh, okay."
Right. And that's kind of been how our journey has been. Is just we like when we look into something, we find out we're both like a little bit wrong and a little bit right, and so like we both adjust.
I see you didn't invite me, said Buck Rogers. You came to Passover. Actually, so when I started the live, Brad was the only one that was available for invite. I didn't realize you were doing live. You have to be going live in order to get invited.
No. See, here's the thing. He still doesn't have the feature, so he's big mad.
Oh, that's because you've been shadow banned. Loser. To the cheeseburger thing,
cool kids.
Yeah. So to the cheeseburger thing, though, just to answer that question real quick, so we're not like ignoring comments, and I only have like 5 people, so I don't want to like ignore the only question.
Same. I only have 5 people.
But always shafted by TikTok because of the Jews, says Buck. So there are a couple of different ways to approach the cheeseburger issue. One approach that I actually tend to agree with, but do not practice myself, oddly enough, is that we kind of have to back up to the Sanhedrin, actually. where we talk about like what the Sanhedrin says, any ruling halakhically that they make is as though it came from the mouth of God, and that's Deuteronomy, right?
Yeah, it's
Numbers.
the it's when the selecting of the 70 elders
Yeah,
happens.
I think it's so it's not. There's a different passage where it describes them as Elohim and not
Ooh,
Ha Elohim. And so it's one of those where it's like, yeah, basically what they say is as though it came from the mouth of God. And it's either in Numbers or the Deuteronomy passage. Either way, um, so it's one of those things where, like, in Greater Judaism, they've accepted that, right? If the Sanhedrin made a ruling on something, you had to treat it like a Torah commandment,
right.
as long as it wasn't in contradiction with the actual Torah commandments itself. Um, but and so they, in some cases, will even acknowledge that, depending on where you read it in the Talmud, that it doesn't say you can't have a cheeseburger, but that's what the sages ruled, and therefore you have to treat it as such.
Right.
Now, I do not belong to a Jewish community. If I were to belong to a Jewish community, then I would happily abide by the community guidelines, which most likely would involve the lack thereof eating a cheeseburger. Out of respect for the fact that they're bigger brother, I'm not. I've merely been adopted into their community, and so, it's a tiny thing to give up, really, to make sure that there's a little bit of unit cohesion, I guess.
Right.
But because that's not the case, I do not follow that. I have no problems with eating a cheeseburger. And I actually recently found out that you kind of abide by the no cheeseburger rule anyway. And this was kind of news to me, actually.
Yeah, I've been kind of weighing out, especially after speaking with my dad about it a lot. Which again, I'm still weighing it out personally, but dad's view is more of the frame that obviously, because of what we read in Genesis, that the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet. And this is not just a messianic passage. This is pertaining to the tribe itself.
Right.
So again, if we use the terms of adoption, then Judah, which that would be the Jews that exist today, they are big brother, and dad, while he's away, has left them in charge. So even if it is an errant uh, rule at this point, that's not something for me as the younger sibling to buck, because then I'm still spitting in dad's face by bucking the authority that he himself established, right?
Yeah.
And so that would be something for dad when he returns to settle and clear the air on. And that's kind of
Um,
that and then crossed with Rabbi Foreman's philosophical take on it, that actually resonates with me pretty well.
that,
The
so that,
whole idea of flesh being the product of death, milk being the product of new life, and then mingling those two, especially in an esoteric sense, just is seedy.
yeah. And I get that. But I think most cooking would be, I don't know, like using eggs to make batter to batter your chicken with. Eggs would also represent, new life.
So
Um,
that is where, yeah, that's one area where, like, that's where
like
I'm still
I get where
weighing it.
he's
I
going with it.
understand I
Yeah,
understand red meat. When it comes to like non-red meat, it's like, okay, well, now we're talking about animals that don't even produce milk in the
yeah,
first place. So that's where I'm kind of still weighing the subject out.
yeah. Like I like Foreman's reasoning, but I don't think it's as airtight as it seems. Like when you first hear it, you're like, wow, that's actually like really good. But I think upon like a little bit more scrutiny, it's sort of like, well, that's not really the it's not a universal reason. It seems to only apply to red meat, which is like kind of strange. And the ruling itself is based on any meat and any dairy. Um, and so I think there's just some inconsistencies there. Uh, you know, it's good. I like, don't mix life and death Okay, cool. I like that.
Right.
And like with most things with the kosher laws, though, they don't always have to have a reason behind them, to be justified. So there's that as well. But yeah, no,
Right.
personally, I don't see a problem with the cheeseburger thing. I tend to not keep a rabbinically kosher diet anyway. Um, there's circumstantially, I don't live in a Jewish community, so it's extremely
Yeah.
difficult to find like kosher slaughtered meat.
Yes. That's
um,
that's almost impossible if you don't live immediately in a Jewish community.
yeah.
Um, Buck. So Buck says, I'm on Brad's side this time. He's cooler and has more beard.
That's okay. So in the field, I didn't shave this part up here, but
Yo.
here's the thing. This is what 5 days of not shaving looks like. Yeah, baby face.
So I actually got another one. It says, okay. It says, without using the teaching of rabbis, can you tell us why not to observe the creation calendar?
What? Why not to observe creation calendar?
Yeah. So
Um,
I'm not entirely sure what they mean by creation calendar either.
I got my
Um,
laptop pulled up.
or again, the stipulations concerning, like, without using the teaching of the rabbis. Um,
I think I have a sneaky suspicion that creation calendar refers to this whole the 7th, 14th, and 28th, 21st, and 28th day of
right,
every
leap
month.
years.
Sabbath day. What? No, of every month is a Sabbath day, and it's not. So basically, every Sabbath day will always be on the 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th day of a Hebrew month, and it's
Oh,
this sort
that's
of yeah.
that's
It's actually
easy.
a little
I don't need the teaching of the rabbis to explain that. A 7-day week is a 7-day week, regardless of where it falls in a month.
yeah.
Like,
I
you
can't remember.
don't cut a week short just because the month started. So now we're starting a whole new week. That last week had 3 days, but oh well, today's the first day of the month, so now it's Monday again, or Sunday technically.
Yeah,
But
so
yeah, no. So it may not be in reference to that. It may be in reference to this, because you like Ashira Rose will be celebrating Passover this month. Because she bases when the new year starts around um, whether or not the new moon comes before or after the the spring equinox, which I again I'm not sure there's a biblical precedence for. Um, I understand next year will be a leap year, but I
yeah, he said that this year was a leap year. But yeah, the current Orthodox calendar, this is not a leap year.
right.
Um,
And
yeah, no, but there's a little like I've been seeing it in my comment sections lately though. This whole you know, every 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th day, no matter what, those are the Sabbath days. And so the Sabbath day that we have is wrong if you measure if you start the first day of the month on the first sliver of the moon and it's not Sunday, then then our week is off, and so we have to start the week on the first sliver and treat that like it's the first day of the week, and then go from there.
so
And I think that's where it's coming from. I've seen that a little bit. I think my issue with it is not every Hebrew month. The moon is in a 28-day cycle, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's in a 29-day cycle, and then you would have an eighth day at the end of the week, and you'd have to, shift it again.
so what I'm gathering is that this is all based on when the first sliver is spotted, and this
Basically, the
maybe
argument is like Saturday, the way we know it, is not actually the Sabbath day. That's the argument. Yeah. Do you see what I'm saying? Like the first sliver, if it's not Sunday and it's the first sliver of the moon, then the week is off. And so you have to start the first day of the Hebrew month on Sunday with the sliver and treat that like it's Sunday. And then, so if I think, like if I were to look up the calendar now, I think the first day of the Hebrew month, this coming month, is like on a Tuesday or something. And so basically,
Right. The
uh,
problem
go ahead.
the problem I see with that is you coming up on a situation where 1 week lasts 3 days, and then suddenly, instead of it being the fourth day of the week, it's the first day of the week on Sunday again, because that happens to be when the sliver started. Like I see that being a legitimate problem, um, because not every month has the same number of days.
Yeah.
Um, so and that's, again, that's seasonal and by design. But in addition to that, when the first sliver of the moon is seen, is there's dispute even about that. And as far as I know, even NASA has evidence of this, that what we call the new moon, when the moon is like not even visible,
Yeah.
for a very, very brief window of time in the middle of the night, uh, and when I say paper thin, I mean paper thin sliver actually will be visible for a very brief window of time that night. Hence why that's the new moon. So what we've been reckoning as the sliver is actually still a day late scientifically.
Yeah. But I
So
think
that would actually reconcile the whole problem.
possibly. I think though, however, if you have to use a satellite to see that sliver, then naturally a first century ancient Jew would not be able to look up into the sky and see the
I don't
sliver
think
and
you have
declare.
to use a satellite to see it. I think it can be seen with a naked eye, but again, you do have to be aware of the window of time in which it will take place, which men such as the Magi would have been.
Yeah. I know that the current calendar we use right now actually is based off of Hillel's calendar,
Right.
um, and it's been accurate for basically 2,000 years still, which is crazy. Um,
Well, I mean,
the
it
Jews used to be good at astrology, and then when the pagans made it popular, Jews were like, "Well, now it seems like a pagan thing to do, so we're gonna not do
right.
that anymore." They just let them hijack it.
Oh, yeah. Um, I meant to talk to you a little bit about what so me and Pastor John talked about it last night, and then I saw you and he were discussing it this morning while I was at work, and I hate both of you for that. um, but Ezekiel 28. So it didn't start with Ezekiel 28. He
Yeah,
found the
keep
time
talking.
to
I can listen.
ask me about the comments I made pertaining to the Garden of Eden that one night, and
Right.
so we got that discussion started. And naturally, the question of the physicality of Eden came up, because in Ezekiel 28, you get this description of the king of Tyre walking in the Garden of Eden.
Right.
Um, and also kind of tied in with that is also that I mentioned, it's very hard to prove from the text of Genesis alone that the serpent actually is Hasatan. And so obviously, again, outcomes this passage. Now, this is actually something that I think you're aware of. This that Dad has actually been going over quite a bit lately. This is like his new favorite topic to question and look over, because um, the idea that it is about Satan is, I'm not going to say it originates with Christianity, but it became popularized with Christianity. It's I have seen it in rabbinic literature, at least, referenced that some believe that it pertains to Satan, but I have yet to read a commentary that actually says as much. And in the commentary that references it, and it does say some believe it to be about Satan, and then it immediately makes a case as to why it can't be. Because again, if we're reading it literally, if you're reading it pashat, it doesn't apply.
Yeah, it would be more of a Ramez interpretation to say
Right.
to apply it to Satan as like a parallel reading poetically, even
Right.
like prophetically. but yeah, the plain meaning in the Hebrew, it doesn't, it's not, it's not Satan.
Well,
um,
so when I say pashat too, that in and of itself needs an amendation, because what Pastor John posited was that, if we take the notion of having walked in Eden literally, like super literally, then it would necessitate that it's obviously not talking about the king of Tyre. The problem there is that this is a prophecy about the king of Tyre, and so if there's one part of it that actually doesn't apply, then you have a problem with the entire prophecy. There wasn't a sense of picky and choosiness as to, okay, well, this part of this whole body of prophecy, this part pertains to the king of Tyre, but then this part actually doesn't, because that's about something else entirely. But the rest of it still does. And um, that you've got to look at the prophecy from the time that it was written in and the people it was written for. Um, for us to, and it's funny, I actually had a discussion with Will about this the other day too. We can't look at a prophecy today and then surmise what it meant based on our 2020 hindsight vision. That's utterly inappropriate. Because if that were the case, you could tie any number of prophecies to any number of things that they absolutely have nothing to do with. So the people that the prophecy was given to, it was intended for them to understand, and so they are the ones who would know what it meant.
so I kind of went in with this John a little bit. I told him I actually have to look into the Hebrew itself a little bit more to give him a better educated answer, because I'm not an expert in Ezekiel. I was going to be for one of my projects at Liberty. I chose an Ezekiel passage and then actually had to change it to an Isaiah passage. Long story short, I ended up not using a whole lot of Ezekiel for the project, but just reading it in English, just trying to look at it plain. I can't tell if it's meant to be poetic Hebrew, and if it is, then it's simply using that imagery in order to describe a downfall that had happened that will happen also here in the same in like manner. And
So
so
the
if it's written to be poetic, then that's exactly how you should read it. It's like, okay, instead of saying it what is it when you say is or like when you say like it's like a hand reaching into the dark versus the fog is a blanket, or the fog is like a
right.
blanket. What's that called? English majors, it's like a
Good Lord,
simile,
if you hadn't asked me.
a simile and then personification or something. But yeah,
Yeah.
so instead of saying you are like the serpent in the garden, it is saying you are the serpent in the garden, and that's not saying it's meant to be taken literally if the Hebrew reads poetically. And I would be able to tell you more if I could open it up and actually check it out.
So the general consensus actually among the commentators that I had time to read, both yesterday and today, um, on Safaria, uh, is that, so the language is predominantly sarcastic starting out. It takes on a very, which is funny because Faith kind of pointed this out, and I actually haven't even talked to her about this to let her know she was correct about it. But the general consensus among the scholars is that it's sarcasm, very similar to the way that Hashem speaks to Job, um, in terms of, was it
Mhm.
you who created X, Y, and Z? Was, can you pull out
Got it.
Leviathan by right? And so when it's describing and speaking about the king of Tyre, particularly, you walked in Eden. This statement is understood to be because Eden means pleasure, right? So this is, it's describing the lifestyle of pleasure that was imparted to this king. He had such pleasure that he could have reckoned himself as having lived in Eden. This is the lavish lifestyle that he had at his fingertips. Um, And yeah, and then other language like, describing him as being wiser than Daniel. This is obviously sarcasm, as as Daniel was the wisest in his time, and the king himself even prostrated himself before Daniel. So clearly, we're not talking about the king being wiser than Daniel.
Actually, have you read what Rashi said on it yet?
Yes, that was the first one I read.
Okay, I have not. I have not read Rashi at all. I just pulled it up on Chabad.org and I was going to check it out. And my lovely comment section has reminded me alliteration and metaphor were the words I was looking for. Not alliteration, metaphor definitely.
Yeah,
And I think simile is the other one.
Simile. Yep. They said the same thing on mine.
Yeah. Hebrew calendar. Okay. Well, Faith appears to be on my channel in my comment section. So you just told her that she was right just now.
Hey.
Okay. With much goodness, you enjoy yourself as if you were dwelling in Eden, in the garden of God, all wealth, pride, and honor. Yeah. So Rashi is taking the the poetic stance that I initially thought it would be.
Right.
Not toot my own horn here, but when you're that familiar with Hebrew wording, you can recognize it even in English. I'm a little proud that
Right.
my initial thought is actually more or less what Rashi is saying as well. And Rashi knows Hebrew better than me, so even though he was French, I will forgive him for being French. But he lived before the surrender in World War II, so so he's okay.
Right.
Let's see what else. You are a great cherub. You are a bird of measure, i.e., a huge bird that covers a large area with his wings. You rule over a large dominion. Mimishach is a word of largeness, like men of stature, which is translated into Aramaic as Havrei. Yep, Havrei de Mishchan. Okay. I give that to you. You're on the mount of sanctuary of God. I give you place, acquire, name yourself. Okay. Yeah, is taking the poetic stance.
Right.
You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created until wrongdoing was found in you. I think that is also an indication right there that we're talking about a poetic nature here. You were perfect in
Right.
your ways from the day you were created. If that's literally the king of Tyre, then we have a candidate for the Messiah right up until he sinned, essentially.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Even verse 13, Rashi still at this point takes the metaphoric approach and says, he says, okay, Tyre is metaphorically compared to the Garden of Eden, filled with gold and all sorts of precious stones, what have you. And that's what I mean. You have to ask yourself, because you and I both understand how to read Rashi, right? Because there's a very particular way to read Rashi.
yeah, what's
And
bothering
it's
Rashi?
right. He's not just making this stuff up. There's something about the verse that doesn't read correctly, even in Hebrew. And so he racked his brain trying to figure out why it reads incorrectly, and then make sense of the statement. And it's the way that I tried to explain it is, like I said earlier, if there's a prophecy that's intended, if there's like if in this metaphor, if I'm a prophet and I have a prophecy about you, Seamus, and it's pertaining to you, but then there's this weird mysterious part of the prophecy right in the middle that has absolutely nothing to do with you, and then I'm just like, yeah, don't worry about that, that's actually about something else and not really you, but we're just going to squeeze it in here, right? Well, that doesn't make sense. There's no modus operandi for prophets ever working that way at any point in scripture. This would actually stand alone as the only example where that happens. The prophecy has to be full within itself and applicable to the persons that it's pertaining to. So,
Yeah.
you could bring out like the
I was
Isaiah
just gonna bring.
passage.
I was just gonna do that with Hezekiah.
Right. You
Yeah.
you you could say it's a doublet. You can extrapolate out of it a double prophecy concerning the birth of Messiah, but literally, it's either about the birth of Hezekiah, or alternatively, Isaiah's own son.
So typically, just for my viewers, you understand this, Brad. Typically in Hebrew prophetic works, the prophecy is actually specifically designed at somebody at some specific point in time, and once it's fulfilled, and that's it. It's done, and it's not expected to have a double meaning. There's nowhere that indicates that it has to have like this other fulfillment elsewhere. And what ends up happening instead is if something happens, and it is just like what happened in a prophecy such as Isaiah, then they will use that and pull it as like a, hey, like this wasn't meant to be messianic, but it's exactly what happened, and so it's a parallelism to the Messiah. It is a fulfillment in a double manner, but that's not to say that the original prophecy was designed to be a messianic prophecy initially.
Right.
And so the birth of the Messiah is actually a perfect example in which, we could say that prophecy was completely fulfilled in Hezekiah, King Hezekiah, and it just so happened that our Messiah was born in the very same manner. And so the guy writing Matthew or Mark, Matthew, saw that parallelism, like that the birth narrative basically reminded him, and he was like, oh wait, hold on, this is just like what happened to Hezekiah. Boom, double fulfillment. And then it becomes a messianic prophecy, and it's sort of like this whole Exodus all over again, where like the Exodus is an original prophecy, but if you see that pattern elsewhere, then you can be like, well, it's just like what happened in Exodus, so clearly this is God working. And that's kind of how it is. But that's not to say that the Exodus is a prophecy of something else, but that you can use it that way.
Right. And the whole fulfillment of it happened, prior to, especially in the case of Hezekiah, so this prophecy concerning the king of Tyre stands out as the only one where it's like, okay, so most of it's about you, the king of Tyre, king of Babylon, what have you. But there's like these two verses here that, don't worry about those. Those are for later. That's, people will understand what that means much later, because it's not really about you, king of Tyre. It's about somebody that we're just comparing you to. And it's like, what? No, those verses have to pertain to the king of Tyre for the prophecy to be consistent within itself.
Yeah.
Otherwise, everybody who's reading this prophecy, everybody that the prophecy is being given to, is sitting scratching their heads going, well, what the heck?
Yeah, there's like this whole portion here, which, again, I think just initially the readers would immediately give it the poetic interpretation, where the serpent, there's a clear parallelism here. The serpent, as we know, was able to walk upright and speak with humanity almost as a co-equal. And in his greed, he gave that up. And so that's a perfect parallelism to here, the king of Tyre, where it's like, okay, you had everything, and now you are, because of your greed, nothing.
And he was, and when you think about it, he was made to crawl on his belly,
I was just gonna say that.
In the sense. So it's, if anything, it's not necessarily that the prophecy about the king of Tyre is about Satan being the serpent in the garden. You would more so actually have to read that the instance of the serpent in the garden as being a foreshadowing of the king of Tyre, if we're really going to say that one or the other is a prophecy. But in either case, you still have the problem of Satan, right? Because again, you can't prove from the text of Genesis alone that Satan is the serpent. As far as we know, the serpent is just a serpent. And that's one thing I appreciate that Rabbi Foreman like strains at, is he's like, okay, let's like break the lullaby effect. Pull yourself out of your 21st century narrative where you understand the whole Bible. Act like you're reading it for the first time ever, starting in page 1. You have no idea what's going to happen, and read it with that frame of mind. Okay? Because if you read it with that frame of mind, if nobody told you before you read Genesis that serpent, that's the devil, right? Then you would never conclude that reading Genesis on your own.
Yeah, you'd be sitting there pretty confused, like, well, okay, what did the serpent want? What's his motivation here?
Right.
Why this? his punishment seems weird. Why that? Like, um,
Right.
yeah,
And one of the
Foreman's good
other
at that.
things too is God is a just God, and the serpent was punished. Now, and this is something else that was brought up, is the possibility that the king of Tyre was possessed by Satan, which I still see as problematic, because then why would Satan heed the counsel of Daniel the prophet?
I think, well, that's not out of
Right.
the realm. It could be a sewed interpretation, not exactly like possession, but maybe under direct influence, and so
If you want to make the argument that he's like whispering in his ear kind of
that's where I
analogy,
was going with that. Yeah,
yeah, that'll
which would
fly.
be
That's
yeah, and actually makes more sense with this garden narrative being thrown in the middle of this prophecy, because it's like, all right, Satan, I know you're there on his shoulder whispering in your ear, and you were in the garden, and so Tyre is hearing this as like as a parallelism, but the little man on his left side of the shoulder is hearing it as like a reminder of his of what he's doing, uh, you know,
right.
and a case could be made for that. I think that's a very sewed Darish
Right.
kind of
But
interpretation.
understanding that sowed is like, you do have to extrapolate that out of the text. It's not plain, it's not in plain sight to see. Um and as far as, again, even as far as the serpent himself is, then this is kind of what I was getting to, is that God punished the serpent. And this is kind of where I was going with the king of Tyre too, is if it's a situation where Satan is under full control, and thus the one who is actually at fault, then it's not justice for God to punish the king of Tyre or the serpent,
Yeah.
because if they were not the masters of their own bodies, or even
Yeah.
their own minds, for that
Yeah.
matter, then
No free
they're
will.
actually entirely innocent.
Yeah.
And so at a certain point, you do have to kind of come to the conclusion that the serpent, all on his own, still took a part in this. Um,
Yeah. That's why I say influence might be the best that you can get.
right, right. And, it's funny actually. So one of the commentaries pertaining to the serpent specifically, that I found interesting, and why it spoke to Eve and not Adam. One of the commentators actually extrapolated out of that because Eve could actually understand the serpent. Not to the exclusion that Adam couldn't, but they specifically note that Eve could understand the serpent,
Hmm.
which I find interesting, given that there is a rabbinic recognition to the connection that females tend to have with nature, that typically men lack.
I'll have to look into that idea. I tend to agree with Rabbi Foreman that the snake was jealous.
Well, and
um,
and certainly capable of speech, which
yeah.
that's the one thing that's always fascinated me, is like, okay, so God took the serpent's ability for uprightness, not its legs. It's, what we've been calling serpents this whole time, snakes, may not actually be what the serpent really was. And I think
Yeah.
that needs to kind of be pointed out here too. The biblical notion of crawling on one's belly does not mean quite literally like on its belly and then slithering around like a snake does. It just means walking on all fours. At one point, serpent walked upright like a man. Now serpent walks, you know, face to the ground.
Yeah.
Um, and
I,
so,
it's like it could compare to make it more believable what you just said. Dogs are referred to as crawling on their belly, and a parallel Hebrew idiom that is not meant to be literal is that you don't talk to somebody face to face in Hebrew, you talk to them mouth to mouth. And literally your mouths don't touch and you talk to each other. That's impossible. But the phrase mouth to, God spoke to Moses mouth to mouth. That is to say that, that is to say face to face in a close proximity, directly. And so in the same way, it's not meant to be literally like crawls on his belly as a belly touches the ground, like mouth doesn't touch the face, kind of thing. So,
right, right. And I got a question. It says communication equals speech, question mark. And that's the thing, is the text does not just say that the serpent communicated with Eve. It says that it spoke.
yeah.
It says, the serpent said.
Yeah,
even if
V'yomer.
God said.
Uh-huh.
Actually, yeah, it's probably not a bad place to go right now since we're
Yep,
there.
I'm pulling it up now. Genesis. Let's go. All right.
It's going to be
Genesis
Genesis
3.
3.
Yep, I have it pulled up online. And now the serpent was more cunning. LOL, it doesn't say that.
Yeah, it says more naked.
And then Vayomer El Haish. Yeah, Vayomer El Haish. And it said
He said
to
to the
the
woman.
woman. Um, and then I've got Afki Amar Elohai. Excuse me, Afki Amar Elohim Lo To. Oh yeah. Wow, it's so incomplete, man. I've seen the video from Rabbi Foreman 100 times, and then
Right.
but like for some reason I go to read it myself, and I'm like, yeah, that's not a complete sentence.
No.
Toch Lu Nicole Eitz Hagan, and so that's yeah, halfway through it's so interruptive. That's not how I would have said that at all. Did God indeed say, the English says, did God indeed say you shall not eat any of the trees in the garden? And the way that
Right.
like me trying to read it now, it's like did God really no. So even if God had said is
Yes.
how I'm reading it. But
And that's exactly what Rabbi Foreman points out. Is it's not the serpent questioning. The serpent's not questioning. He's not saying, "Yea, hath God said," and causing Eve to question. His statement is literally, "Even if God said," like that's the attitude.
yeah, but it's not complete. There's more. There's half the sentence is missing because it's even if God said, "You shall not eat any of the trees of the garden?" Question mark. So there's like a portion after I would say lo toch tochlu is where I would say that another part of the
A
sentence we're
break.
completely missing. Yeah, we're like because that the syntax doesn't make sense. There's it's conjugated with a missing part of the sentence, and so ki yeah, even if ki amar Elohim lo tachlu, wow, Nicole Eitz Hagan. Okay, yeah, there's just like what. So
Right.
what I'm trying to say here is, if you were a natural Hebrew speaker and you were reading this, it's
It
illegible.
doesn't
It's
make
completely
sense.
illegible.
Right. But so the important part there though that I was kind of getting at is the Vayomer. This is that he said, that he spoke. These are words that he actually spoke. So what fascinates me about the whole idea of a serpent, and why I say that what we've been calling serpents this whole time um, may not be, there's a possibility, high possibility, I would say, that they are not the same creature or being with which Eve was communicating in the garden. And the reason being, again, is that it doesn't specify that it has no legs. It just specifies that it once walked upright and now it walks facing the ground. Um, but also that it was capable of speech. Now, you could argue maybe all animals were capable of speech at this time. Um, and maybe post flood that's something that went away. I think the Chronicles of Narnia series is loosely based on that theory, but I again, you don't see a basis for that. What you see in the description of the serpent is in addition to its being the most naked, it's also again the most intelligent. Or it's like there's mankind as the most intelligent beings created by God, but then just ever so much below mankind, there's the serpent, the
Yeah.
next cleverest, intelligent, like most intelligent being. So similar to mankind in its own likeness that it walked upright like a man, and obviously was capable of speech at this point. So whatever the serpent is, we we don't see at any point that God, and I don't think it can be derived at any point that God revoked its ability for speech. So
It could have been destroyed in the flood.
could have been destroyed in the flood, or there could be some creature that lives deep in the Amazon forest and parts of the world that humanity has never seen that is still capable of speech and is yet not human.
A mockingbird. Yeah, no, that was the weirdest moment for me just now was having seen Rabbi Foreman's video before and then going back and reading it for myself and like, man, that's super confusing.
Right. It
um,
twists the brain all up. Like, wait, what?
yeah,
So
even Rashi's commentary, his commentary is all over the place about that one bit.
right. And for those of you who are watching, the video that we're referencing, or the video series that we're referencing from Rabbi Foreman, there's two, because he actually goes over this in detail in both. But there's his Genesis series. I believe the specific episode is called Serpents of Desire. Or
Yeah,
that may
it
be
is.
the article. He wrote an article first called Serpents of Desire where he outlines this argument. But I believe the episode is also called that. So Rabbi Foreman has an organization, a ministry called Aleph Beta. They've got an app that you can download. Some of the content is free. Some of it you've got to pay in order to access. But the other video series that I just started listening to again because of this discussion, because again it's been like 2 years since I've seen it, and I forgot exactly how he established the difference between Gan Eden and the Earth. Is the Tale of Two Names.
Yeah, that's
Which
a
is
premium.
interesting. One of the points that he brings to bear in that is that now it's not in the whole of Torah, but the God is only ever referred to as Elohim, as Yod He Vav He Elohim. It's not that it only takes place in Genesis 2. It's just that this is the largest swath of Scripture that it does take place in. It does happen one other time in, like, I think in Ezekiel actually, and then another time in Exodus. But Genesis chapter 2 is like, that's where the most times that you read. And so I would actually wager to say that in this passage in Ezekiel and in Exodus, you would almost have to read those in light of Genesis 2. There's got to be some way that they tie back to Genesis 2, because Genesis 2 is what sets the precedence for using that phraseology to refer to God. Um, Again, for those of you watching, the Tale of Two Names is about the differences between Genesis 1 and 2, namely that in Genesis 1, it is Elohim who creates everything. But then in Genesis 2, when you get around to the garden, um, after the establishment of the Sabbath and everything, the first like 3 or 4 verses, um, it's no longer Elohim who is creating. It is Yod He Vav He Elohim. Not that those are separate beings, but separate attributes of God. And so there's an importance, and there's emphasis on why there's this separation between the two, and kind of what he brought to bear, in at least in the first episode about Elohim in chapter 1 is that would be like the masculine attribute predominantly, because it takes on a more engineer like personality.
Yeah.
It's like everything is created, but then he expects everything else to create within itself. It's in the English translations, it says let the waters bring forth, and it's not let, it's he's commanding the waters bring forth teeming animals. And so, like, it's not that he's doing the creating. He has created the body of water, and now he's telling it to bring forth its own life at this point, basically. um and the idea being that a creator is less personally invested in the creation, which is why the idea is to create something that is self-sufficient, right? You create a Rube Goldberg machine. That's the example he gives. So if the child has to be actively involved in every other step to make it work, he's got to carry the ball from this part to this part just so that it can continue. Well, that's not impressive. But if he pushes a button here and the whole thing works to its completion, that's impressive. It's a self-sufficient system, and that's what is created in Genesis 1. Whereas Genesis 2, there's a much more personal touch. There's a much more feminine, emotional connection that we see that God has with the creation.
I'm going through the Aleph Beta website, and I actually don't see the video.
You've got to go through his Genesis. You know how you can search by book of the Torah?
Yeah, I've done
Go
that.
to. Really? I swear I was
Genesis,
looking at it earlier today.
Under Bereshit.
The series. Yeah, the series starts with the lullaby effect. That's the first episode of the series.
Is it a premium series?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, that might be my mistake. Then
Do you not have a premium account?
I have a premium. Of course I have a premium account.
I was going to say, I was hoping you were cool.
I'm no pleb. No, yeah, just let's see. Yeah, maybe I'm missing it. I'll just find it later. That's fine. I see Tale of Two Names. That's definitely premium.
Oh yeah, Tale of Two Names is definitely. See, I had a hard time finding that one earlier today.
That one's first one that came up for me.
Seriously, so I couldn't find it earlier today. I found in his Genesis series the Tale of Two Trees, which is another. Ooh, I love that subject.
Oh,
the two trees, because the question, which one is at the center of the garden?
Yep.
According to Genesis 1, it's the tree of life. According to Genesis 3, it's the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Yep. If you ask Eve, what's in the middle?
God said the tree of life was in the middle of the garden. Eve said the tree of knowledge of good and evil was at the middle of the garden. And actually, no, it's not even that. It's even worse than that. It's that God said the tree of life was in the middle of the garden. Eve said the tree that they are not allowed to eat from was the one in the middle of the garden.
Yeah.
So it's even more obscure than
that. Yeah, he goes over that in his video. That's like 10 episodes, and they're all an hour long.
Yeah.
To just give you an idea. Okay. You want to say goodbye to my followers?
Night,
my wife's going to bed.
Hello, everyone.
That's Brad.
Yeah, I see that. Hi, Brad.
She's going to bed. Good night. I love you.
Have fun, everybody.
Yeah. Is TikTok going to block me for that? Straight people, how dare you?
Oh man. But yeah, so that's been an interesting conversation to have with my dad every time it comes up, is like, okay, so kind of the whole idea of the serpent in the garden and Ezekiel 28, we kind of been jumping around a little bit, but it's all kind of centered around this in part. Is the notion of Satan being this evil bad guy figure you can't prove it from the Old Testament. Because the only way you can prove it from the Old Testament is by assuming that the serpent is Satan, which you can't prove from that text. The only way you can make a case for that is by appealing to Ezekiel 28, which you can't prove it from this text. And so there's a stack of two presuppositions about the person of Satan within two different texts. And they're exactly that. They're presuppositions. You can't really plead the case from the text without extrapolating from the text something that isn't actually written there. And so the idea of this nefarious figure of Satan doesn't really show up until the New Testament.
Which I do believe one of the New Testament authors gives credit to the adversary for the serpent's involvement. Hold on. I'm trying to remember where that passage is. Hold on.
I
I'm gonna
know.
Google some
I
keywords
know
here.
that there's one. There's one where it references Satan and it says that old serpent.
Yes. Let's see
The
here.
thing is, what I would expect if that were the case, what I would expect
Revelation
is that
12, the ancient serpent.
right.
Yeah.
So what I would expect then is that there would be at least some way of pleading that from a targum at least. I would hope that one of the targums made reference to the serpent being Satan, because the targums do reference things that are reflective of the first century mind, but are
Yeah.
not necessarily written in the text. Like, so somebody asked the other day how we know that Melchizedek is Shem, the son of Noah. And what we know, at least about the first century, is that the Jews of the first century believed that Melchizedek was Shem, because the Targum Yonatan specifically says, when it references Melchizedek, it says, who was Shem, the son of Noah. So Targum Yonatan actually identifies Melchizedek as Shem.
Yeah.
So we know from that Targum that the Jews of the first century believed that Melchizedek of Genesis was the son of Noah.
Yeah.
So I would expect to find something similar in a Targum, but and again, I haven't read all of them, because some of them aren't even translated on Sepharia, and like I understand Hebrew, but not enough to actually like decipher that without any help.
The Targums are actually written in Aramaic, so it's even more difficult.
Right.
Let's see here.
So
Actually, so Targum, just Targum. You know what? I bet there's a Targum Jonathan Yohanan on Ezekiel.
there's like one.
No. Targum Yohanan, not one for Ezekiel. I guess he didn't do one for Ezekiel.
Interesting. Okay, so I got one comment that probably needs to be addressed, and that's that this is going way back up, but somebody posted in the chat that Israelites were polytheists at one point. Only whenever they fell into paganism were they polytheists. As far as the it's this idea that El was part of a pantheon. There is absolutely no historical evidence to support that idea. This is something that I would wager to say ignorant historians looked at Canaanite theology and then Hebrew theology and saw a few similar words and went, well, clearly they're related, without any established link between the two. And so understand this idea that El was part of a pantheon is nothing more than speculation. It is true in the Canaanite pantheon that there was a god apparently named El who was part of a pantheon. That is in no way related to Elohim, because understand, Elohim doesn't mean children of El. Elohim means powers, plural. Or you could even say gods, plural, in that sense, but it's in the perfect sense. So yeah, it even means judges. But it's not the plural form of El. It is the plural form of
Elohai.
Eloah. Yeah, or
Yeah.
Elohai. So the idea of El itself being the singular form, that's there's no basis for that.
Yeah, there's this the idea that El Elyon is the Most High God, and that Yod He Vav He is one of the sons of El Elyon. And there's a passage there, like you see, it uses both in the same sentence, so it's clearly two different gods. And you are obviously not familiar with Hebrew poetry in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
And I could see where if you were an idiot, you would get that from Genesis 1 and 2 with the two different uses of the name. And so you can be like, well, it seems to be like two different creations, two different gods. Once again, not understanding how Hebrew poetry works. So you're making a lot of assumptions, uneducated assumptions. the language is not even, it's not even in the language. This idea that El Elyon or Elohim means sons of El does not
Yeah,
make semantic sense. Ben Elohim would be sons of El, if
yeah,
anything, but
B'nai Elohim.
yeah, or like B'nai El, El B'nai, like they're not even close.
No,
The Canaanite language is a
it
Semitic
doesn't
language.
work. I forgot about that. It doesn't even work in Hebrew sentence structure.
Yeah, and even then, it's they're saying it's a Semite, it's a Canaanite thing. Well, if you look at ancient Canaanite language, Elohim is still, it doesn't fit the sentence structure of the Canaanite language. It's a Semitic language. It's as close to Hebrew as Arabic is. And if you listen to the two languages, you're like, yeah, they're basically the same language with a different dialect. Uh, Shalom Aleichem is Hebrew for peace be with you. Assalamu alaikum is Arabic for peace be with you. Can you hear the similarities? It's basically the same language. And so you can't say Elohim is sons of God or sons of the Most High when B'nai El would be the closest thing to get to that.
Right. The language doesn't suddenly change where it's convenient.
Yeah. Yeah. Im in every Semitic language is plural. Just about every Semitic language, im is plural.
He says, because there's no overlap between Canaanites and Israelites. Exactly.
Yeah, there's a lot of missing things there. The only other option for the ancient Israelites would have been what's it? I used to teach this. I just can't remember the name of it. It's been a while. It's when you recognize that other gods exist, but there's only one true God. Above all other gods, and that would be Elohim.
Elohim Acherim.
No. There's a word for it's like it's not monotheism. It's a monolatry, and that is to say you're only allowed to worship one God, the Most High God, and that all these lesser gods are just that they are creations of the Most High God, and they are a lesser God, like an angel, that are being worshipped as a god. And so that's not to say that they don't exist, because they do exist, and that's called a monolatry. And ancient Israelites were monolatries.
He's now appealing to the pilgrimage festivals being tied to nature, which is actually, so this is one of the funny things about Judaism that it stands apart from every other pagan sun cult, is that they're actually not tied to nature, which is why they don't take place on all of the same days the way that every other sun cult does. Right? Yeah. There's the reason Passover doesn't fall on Easter. Rarely, on a rare occasion, Passover and Easter may fall on the same day or even close to one another. But more often, they're about a week apart from each other. And Easter is reckoned directly in accordance with nature and the pattern of the sun. Passover is in no way reckoned according to the patterns of the sun or the stars or the moon, what have you. And the same goes for the other festivals. There is a reason why even Hanukkah doesn't necessarily follow the same pattern that Christmas does, because it's not being reckoned according to the solstice. Now, being in the same season in and of itself is not a correlation. I mean,
it's indicative of the fact that they were basically fighting against Christmas at the time.
Right.
So real quick though, henotheism. One of my comments. Monolatry is the word that I was looking for. Henotheism is this idea that you have to worship one God out of many. The difference between monolatry and henotheism: monolatry recognizes that there's one true God and everything else is a created being, and you can worship those things, but you should only worship the one true. And henotheism is actually what most of the Eastern religions were at the time. That gods were actually region based, and so they're all basically co-equal. And so it depended on which region you were in. God only that particular God only held a sway or power or influence in a very regional sense, which is actually why Pharaoh says things like Yod He Vav He. I don't know this God. and that because it's a very regional idea. And Daniel thrown into the furnace, same idea, where he thinks that this Yod He Vav He God has no power here, saying that he's still a god, right, but not here. That's henotheism. Judaism has always either been monotheism or monolatry, and there's a very fine difference between the two.
Well,
Whereas
even when it's monolatry, that in and of itself requires further explanation, because it's not monolatry in the same way that the pagan nations had monolatry. Okay, so like Pharaoh and even Nebuchadnezzar in the book of Daniel, it's referenced that they were monolatrous. They did recognize regional gods. And even when Nebuchadnezzar acknowledged that the Hebrew God was higher and above all other gods, part of why he did the things he did concerning Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is because he figured that Daniel's God was so lofty a God that he didn't concern himself with the matters of men. And so there are things like that. Whereas for Judaism, the monolatry in this sense would be directly correlating to the Elohim Acharim, the other gods, as it were, but they recognize them not as gods, but as powers that work for and on behalf of Hashem and are charged with being over these nations.
Yeah, there's a fine line between monotheism and monolatry. It's
right.
It really, the difference is more or less: do we call these other powers gods, or do we just call them idols that are being worshipped? And in ancient Israel, they were referred to as other gods, and that's why you see in ancient Israeli scripts, like Isaiah, like Ezekiel, like the God above all other gods. That turn of phrase is specifically a monolatry type of phrase, versus a monotheistic phrase would be to say, the one true only God, there is no other. And that's very reminiscent of Daniel in the Psalms. It's the same thing. It's just whether or not you call these other things other gods, more or less.
Right.
So it's very indicative of the evolution of how you view the sole creator. And once Judaism was more established, by the time it gets to David in the Psalms, you actually have this idea that nothing else exists apart from God, and then Tanya comes into play, right?
Right,
So
right.
That's when we have a strict monotheism viewpoint. After
he's appealing to a couple of other things here. This is hilarious. Actually, I've never had a conversation with someone who tried to tie the Jewish holidays to pagan holidays, because there's genuinely no overlap. But he's appealing to the egg on the Seder plate. That's a post-Babylonian addition to the Seder plate. It didn't exist prior to the Babylonian captivity. And so he's arguing that Tish B'Av is the new year of trees.
Tish B'Av is the fast day.
Well, yeah, Tish B'Av is like the day of mourning.
The destruction of the first and the second temple, the final solution being enacted.
War. It's got nothing to do with trees. Like, I don't know how you tie trees with mourning.
There's a different Tu B'Shvat, I think, was the tree.
Right, which is not even one of the like main holidays.
Yeah. Tu B'Shvat, 15th day of Shvat, New Year of the Trees. Yeah, Tu B'Shvat is the New Year of the Trees, not Tish B'Av. So I guess a common mistake if you're not a Hebrew fluent speaker.
Right. But I can see that being a hard distinction to make.
I thought the Hebrew calendar was lunar based. I got a question here. It is lunar based. The moon and the stars and the sun were put in the sky for determining times and seasons, and so that is right. That's also why you have weird leap years, like every 6th year a whole month is added, kind of thing.
Right, but you've also got elsewhere where it specifically says that they were given to the nations for determining such times and seasons. Israel was to stand apart.
It's still a lunar calendar, though.
Well, sure. I mean, sure. You still reckon the calendar by it. So when I guess one of the arguments I'm referring to would be people who like those who will be celebrating Pesach this month rather than last month, is because they reckon it according to the pattern and movement of the stars, rather than according
Got
to
it.
God's calendar, right? That's more so what I'm responding to, is those methods of reckoning were given to the nations, not to Israel. I got a question. How do you perceive Hanukkah? Because it's not part of the original holidays given in Leviticus. So there are a couple that are not original holidays given in Leviticus. The one
Like
we even just mentioned
Tish B'Av.
earlier, Tish B'Av.
Yeah.
But even Purim is not an original holiday given in Leviticus, but it's still a biblical holiday. And Hanukkah is still actually a biblical holiday. We know for a fact that Yeshua observed it. Was that
So
John
actually,
10?
I disagree semantically though with you, and I
Okay.
think you know where I'm going with this.
I do know where you're going with this, but go on for their sake.
The biblical holidays are the 7 holidays as lined out in
Right.
Leviticus, but the other holidays, those are when people say, well, we don't have to keep the Jewish holidays. Hanukkah, I would consider a Jewish holiday, mostly because it's basically Israel's independence from the Greek occupation via the Maccabees.
Right.
And it's
a celebration of
biblical in
eating
that.
Christmas.
Yeah, it is. And it is biblical in that it's recorded biblically. It's recorded in the Apocrypha in Maccabees, and it's also recorded as Yeshua is celebrating it in the temple. And so it's New Testament, right? It's actually in the book of John. So yeah, it's biblical, but it is a Jewish holiday that we celebrate because it's biblical, if that makes sense.
Right.
I don't celebrate Israel Independence Day, even though they're 73 today, by the way. Yeah, Israel is 70, but I don't celebrate, like if I were in Ireland, actually, funny enough, when I go to Ireland, if I'm there during July, nobody in Ireland celebrates the 4th of July because that's an American holiday.
Right.
Just as an example. So.
Right. But no, as far as Hanukkah, the way that I view that especially is, after having done the history on it, it's an awesome holiday anyway. The history on the holiday is wonderful, and if you consider yourself grafted into Israel, it's definitely something you should take pride in and take joy in.
If you support our troops, celebrate Hanukkah.
Right.
Because that is some special forces stuff for happening right there.
For real. But also, if it was good enough for Jesus, it's definitely good enough for me.
Yeah, fair enough. Likely just the way the calendar lines up, the Festival of Lights, the Feast of Dedications, the rededication of the temple, God's re-entering into the temple, the confirmation that God is with the people of Judaism is what Hanukkah is about. And it's very likely that Yeshua was conceived by the Holy Spirit on Hanukkah at some point. And so it's like, why would you not keep that?
Right. And that's where I take issue with the argument with well, they take place in the same season. And I'm gonna wax a little Matt Walsh here, is that the calendar itself is centered around the seasons, because the seasons are natural processes of nature. They cannot be avoided. So if you have a holiday in any fashion, it will take place in a season, and other cultures that are completely unrelated to you also have holidays that take place in seasons. And with as many cultures as there are in the world, there is a high likelihood that you and a culture across the ocean, completely separated from your own, will have a holiday in the same season. That's why I don't. It's pointless to try and argue that, well, they take place in the same season. Yeah, every season has a set of holidays in every culture. Where you come into problems is when across cultures the same day is acknowledged, like Easter, like Christmas, like Halloween. Like there are holidays that across cultures that shouldn't have anything to do with each other if they don't have a common link, and yet they do observe the same holidays, and that's because they do have a common link, which is the Tower of Babel.
There's even a Talmudic connection with I think it's the 8 days of the 12 days of Christmas kind of thing.
Right.
There's actually this idea that Adam was actually the first one to introduce a solstice holiday, because Adam, at the fall of man, springtime is most likely, when he was around the most. And so the days, or not springtime, excuse me, summertime was most likely when he was around about created. And so every day that went by, the days got shorter. And so he began mourning 12 days before, or 8 days before the solstice, because the days were getting stupid short. And he thought the world was ending, and it was his fault. And then after the solstice, the days began to get longer again. And so then he went into a celebration because, oh, this is just the natural cycle of the world. It's not my fault. The world's not ending. Everything is okay. And so the solstice holiday was born. And they attribute it to Adam. And then the pagans, of course, instead of, worshiping God, the creator of all things that set that in motion, started to turn it into their own, to their own thing. But later on, we see a very clear distinction from God. Don't do those things at all. These are your holidays now. No more of that. The pagans, that's their thing. They celebrate solstices. You do not. So even though Adam may have put it in place, that doesn't make it right. Adam was a fallen man, just like the rest of us.
So he's now saying Judaism literally has a harvest festival. You're right. They do have a harvest festival. Coincidentally, It always takes place like a month before every other pagan culture's harvest festival.
Yeah.
Because it's not centered around the stars or the sun movement or the move. It's not. Judaism's holiday calendar is entirely distinct and separate from every other pagan religion. They have no relation between them. And so I actually got a really good question here.
What do we got?
DC Ministry says, I'm a pastor. What is the best to transition my church from Sunday worship to Sabbath? So I guess he's looking for advice on as a pastor, how to kind of introduce this to the church.
So actually, if he's still listening, don't change anything, actually. And here's why. I think the Sabbath day is a day of rest, right? And part of that is observing the idea of not kindling a fire. The Sabbath day should be spent in your house, in your home with your family, quality time. You can definitely go, and it's encouraged to hold an assembly, meet with others at other people's houses, have a meal together, worship together. But to make people drive to a separate building and like turn on all the lights and get all the music going and have people that are paid on salary to show up and basically work on the Sabbath day, don't do any of that. There's nothing wrong with worshiping, having a worship service on any other day of the week as well as the Sabbath day. Personally, I would just say I would encourage having people spend that time at home with their family and not doing any work. And that includes not coming to church and making your church members who work for the church work on that day as a salary. Because I know most church workers work for a salary. You and I used to work for a church. And so there's money involved. And so there's a sense of work being done. And I would encourage instead, if you do open the building, leave it open, like show up, don't do any, like actual work, but kind of like leave it open and people can come in and go and have prayer meetings, a Bible study, and use the venue. But I wouldn't hold an official, like,
would you
scheduled service, maybe.
Would you even say maybe encourage congregants to host like small groups studies in their own
first
home?
And foremost, I would encourage that. Absolutely.
Like maybe in groups of like 8 to 10 per household or something like that, or smaller. I mean, I wouldn't go any more.
If you're a pastor of a church, most likely you have your small group of close regulars that come all the time, and they're well educated. They're probably not perfect, and that's fine. You know that as a pastor. Take those 8 to 10 people or however many you have and give them some study material and say, hey, on Sabbath day, would you be willing to host your own Bible study at your house or some other venue or somebody else's house, and get some of the other members of the church to kind of come and meet at that place, and kind of entrust them with that material, and that way you're letting go of some of the work too.
I have another spectacular question about the Sabbath. What about medical workers? Should we not work on Saturdays?
No, that's life-saving measures there.
Even according to Torah law, protecting life is paramount above all others. And the reason being, if you don't work on Saturdays and people die because of it, they will not have the chance to then therefore live to observe the Sabbath themselves.
Yeah.
So
at another day. Yeah.
Your labor is paramount and important towards helping other people to live, to have the opportunity to live out the commandments themselves. Now, obviously, most hospitals have, more than just a few people on staff. Now, some don't. Some only have a handful of people on staff. But if there is a circumstance under which you as an individual could switch schedules with someone who probably isn't observant or is not a believer, then I would probably still encourage that. But if it's not something that's negotiable, then that's your living. That's definitely not something God's going to hold against you.
Yeah. And to go back to that pastor, if he's still listening, if you do hold a Saturday service, I would definitely do it at like Saturday night, like a Havdalah, to separate the day. So yeah, if you do like have a Saturday service, do it at in the evening time, and look up how to do. There's a website called Hebrew for Christians. It's actually a great website, and they have a Havdalah, like how to do a Havdalah, which is just how you end the Sabbath day on a Saturday night. It's all there. If I were running a church, that's what I would do. I wouldn't change the Sunday thing. The thing is, we live in a world where Sunday is, the national day for church in America. So you can use that to your advantage and then still teach Sabbath day observance while allowing people to come into your congregation on Sunday who normally wouldn't go to a Saturday service, because the only thing people know in this country is Christianity, which is Sunday. So if a person is going to feel inclined to go and have a meeting with Jesus, so to speak, likely he's going to show up on a Sunday. It's very unlikely that a random stranger who knows nothing about the church at all is going to show up on a Saturday, because nobody does that. So use the Sunday service to your advantage and encourage Saturday observance while still holding a Sunday service, just like a Wednesday service or any other day of the week service. There's nothing wrong with worshiping every single day of the week. Just don't force yourself to work on the Sabbath day, is what I would say.
Yeah.
I've heard this 3 times in the last week. I'm curious as well. This is to that. I've seen a video that confused me. Melchizedek worshipped a different god, El Elyon. We talked about that a little bit, actually, a little bit ago. Yeah. It's based off of linguistic ignorance on Semitic languages, and it's over confusing things with ancient Canaanite religion. Which, here's the thing too. Archaeologically, let's just say that Elohim in a Canaanite language means sons of El, and that the Yod He Vav He shows up as one of the sons of El in the ancient Canaanite languages. Sure, let's go ahead and accept that premise. The problem you're going to run into is, while this is going on in ancient Canaan, we already have Hebrew Israelites in Egypt worshiping the one true God, and so now you have to reconcile the use of both names in a completely different, unrelated culture, in a foreign land, and then them not clashing and coming together for another 456 years before Hebrew Israelites run into Canaanites. And so, just because two words can be the same in different languages, or might sound the same in different languages, they have two different meanings entirely. That's just from an archaeological point of view. That the ancient Canaanite religion is more than 400 years removed from when the Hebrew Israelites show up, and by then the Canaanite religions have actually moved on to more like Molech and Asherah. And so they were no longer doing this El Elyon and Yod He Vav He thing, for a couple hundred years by now. So it's not congruent. If I were to say the word Instagram 20 years ago, you now have to reconcile that 20 years ago Instagram didn't exist. And so when I said Instagram, what did I mean by that? Because surely I didn't mean Instagram like we know today, even though I said the word. But it's not possible, because Instagram simply didn't exist. So there has to be another explanation as to why I said that and what it means. You can't just say, well, 20 years later, there's an Instagram, and so clearly he's referring to that. No, that's not possible. It has to be another explanation. Just because I use the same word, it doesn't mean anything. So that's my example.
Right. So we actually got something else here. Random Chris 83. This is the subject of kosher. So the statement was made that kosher is blessed by a rabbi. That is not
that's
exactly
not what kosher is at all.
What kosher is.
Yeah.
And so the discussion going on in my comment page is about clean and kosher eating, so the difference between clean meats and then kosher meats, it's not that it's been blessed by a rabbi per se, particularly when it comes to meat. Clean meat that is kosher means that the animal itself has been inspected to be in good health, and also have no blemishes. And then very, very particularly, it's been slaughtered in a very specific manner, scientifically proven to be the most humane manner of slaughter, actually.
Incredibly humane.
Yeah. And so there's that. But also you'll find things that are marked kosher, like bottled water even can be marked kosher. That doesn't just mean that a rabbi blessed it. It means that everything about the facility where it's bottled, where it's purified and whatnot, everything about the manufacturing of that product is inspected for a certain level of cleanliness by a rabbi. A rabbi who is certified in this level of cleanliness. And if you get the kosher certification, it means that you have met his standards. So honestly, for anybody who is worried about clean eating specifically, just making sure that there's no additives or any other things in the food that you eat or in the water that you drink and stuff like that. If you look for stuff that is marked kosher, that is the most strenuous form of clean certification that a company can get.
Yeah. Just as an example, if you ever see a kosher salad, you're talking about lettuce that never had unkosher bugs on it.
Right. It was kept under lock and key and inspected.
And so you could just wash lettuce, right? And whatever was on it is fine. In a kosher process, at no point in time did that lettuce ever come in contact with something that would otherwise be unkosher. And there's only 2 bugs that are considered kosher. And so, little things like that, like bottled water, if a roach is found in the vicinity of the bottled water facility, it can no longer meet the kosher certification. And so, there's a ton of cleanliness stringencies in it. The idea is and even with Gentiles, right? Kosher meat can never be touched even by a non-Jew. And so you have very, very strict cleaning standards as far as hygiene, as well as this other standard where even if you're not legally a Jew, you're not even allowed to handle this meat.
Right.
And so you basically have only specialists working with your stuff. They don't just hire people off the street and you're like, hey, you're a meat packer now. Make sure you wash your hands before you pack the meat and it's kosher. No, it's like, no, this guy specifically certified to be a kosher meat packer. So,
Right.
yeah, it's so much more expensive to get the certification, and that's why usually it's on more expensive products, and it's harder for companies to get that certification. I can proudly say that Oreo has that certification.
Yes.
And
So does Maxwell House Coffee.
Yes, Maxwell House Coffee even has a Passover Haggadah in there.
I know, it's awesome. Faith just picked up another one
cool.
the other day. So I don't. I might use it next year for Passover. I don't know. It might be interesting.
Ooh,
but nice.
Yep, that's the. I picked up a to break in the new house. I picked up a new Scotch. Ooh. It's called Dalwhinnie.
Nice.
And this is top shelf. This is made. It's a Scotch made in the Highlands. Now here's the thing: it is the highest Highland Scotch that you could possibly get. It's the most northern distillery in all of Scotland.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yep. And so
that's awesome.
So I'm celebrating the new house with that.
Absolutely.
I'm surprised you're not having anything, actually.
I am.
Oh, that's not the same.
I still haven't replenished my stock from when we got rid of everything for Passover.
Yeah, I have to repurchase my stuff from Doc. But speaking of, I got the capture card and I tested it. And so I'm ready for killing the church via
OBS.
Digital.
Yeah. So, okay. So, yeah, we'll have to schedule a time when, like, I will. Have you downloaded OBS yet?
No, I have not.
Okay. It's a free download, and it downloads super fast. And I have a Toshiba, so your Apple should actually take it much easier.
And one chip for the win.
But yeah, so we'll schedule a time then, download that, and I will just walk you through everything that I've learned about it, because it took me a month to learn all of it. Even though it's like super stupid easy, it'll take me 20 minutes to explain it all to you. But yeah, we'll go over that, and then we'll be able to do stuff. Because again, one of the cool parts about it is it actually records both the video and the audio at the same time. It's you won't actually be recording with your camera. Your camera will just act as the webcam. Yeah. Which you are using to record. So yeah, that's how I've been able to kind of just. I need either for you to send me the file for the introduction. No, because that only works for Killing the Church episodes. So I have to film my own introduction and edit that and stuff.
If you tell me what kind of idea you're going for, I can whip something together.
Right, because yeah, I don't have access to the same music and stuff that you do. And
well, I can give you my login information. It's Epidemic Music, Epidemic Sound, I believe. Is
that an app, or?
It's a website with royalty-free music, and as long as you have the subscription, epidemicsound.com. I'll send you my login information for that. And yeah, basically you can, as long it's like, I can't remember how much it is a month, but yeah, I pay the subscription and you have unlimited access to the whole website, and it's all royalty-free music, so you can use it in your videos and still collect monetary
so it's like copyright free, but you can still make money from it.
Yeah, it's completely copyright free. You can totally, but you do have to link, and I've already done it. I've already linked Epidemic Sound to our Ultimate Media YouTube page. So if you upload anything using Epidemic Sound music, it'll automatically not strike us for copyright purposes and make our videos monetarable.
Sweet.
Okay. Yeah, everything's linked up. I just need to give you the login information so you can get that.
Just like text that to me. The other question that we have is when are we gonna upload the interview with Buck?
I'm working on that right now. It's a very long interview. It's a little bit longer than we anticipated.
Yeah, no, we went a little ways with that, but it was such a good interview though. Like, I'm so stoked for you guys to see it. Like, it's a good one.
The longest part, honestly, is how many rapper air horns I have to put in because there's so many burn moments. So I just have to keep putting in the rapper air horn.
So Buck Rogers, it's going to be even better than you imagined it would be.
I got
Seamus is a pro editor and everything.
Yeah, I'm far from pro. So I got two quick questions. The first one should be quick. What is killing the church? Me and Brad have a YouTube series, a channel called Alternate Media. Check us out, subscribe.
That's the ministry.
Link is in the bio. We have a bunch of videos, and we have a series called Killing the Church. And it's when me and him and I together have a conversation about things that are either killing the church or need to be killed in the church. And so Killing the Church is the name that was born out of that concept. And so we've got a video on like Acts chapter 10, Acts chapter 15, legalism, Easter versus Passover, Christmas versus Hanukkah. We got a few things already up. Worship, like what is worship? Things that are, killing the church. So that's the first question I wanted to address. And then this one's actually for the both of us. Thoughts on prayer of intercession, like with asking saints. Now for me, it's an easy one, but I wanted to give you a chance to talk.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we typically are going to have the same answer there. There is one.
So it doesn't matter who
there is one intercessor between man and God, the man Jesus Christ.
Oh, man, I was just going to say that too. Took the words right out of the Bible in my mouth.
Yeah. Buck says your background isn't as cool as mine.
It's okay. Hold on. Give me 1 second. All right. All right. We're doing this. You ready for this?
Let's see your studio.
Boom.
See, I am totally jelly of the bookshelf and the light. That light's gonna look so cool in your videos.
Yeah. Yep. It's the hair light. It's really bringing everything together. So.
Oh, I saw in the Black Cat shop here, the witch shop. They had the long, long cords with the light, so you can like hang lights from the ceiling with the like dim lit bulbs. So I thought about like adding some of those in here to get like more of the dark, studious ambiance in videos. I don't know. I'm considering it.
So as like a lighting, studying for how to like light up a studio, this is part of that. What you want is a light that's behind you to make this hair, to pull you away from the background. It's called hair light. I'm sure our actual graphics design major from Liberty can confirm that. But so that's part of the reason why I got this. Not only does it naturally light up this beautiful bookshelf here, very, very nicely. It was really cheap, and it covers what I want it to do. I can't wait to get the rest of the books up on this. This wall is going to be filled entirely with bookshelves, and all of these books here in boxes will be on them.
I boxed those.
And actually, let me show you. So this is the studio room. We put a couch in here.
Oh, nice.
I got my Marine Corps stuff on it right now. Just ignore that. Matt Smith over there, chilling. But yeah, so but this next time I come down to visit you, which will probably be this weekend actually, because I gotta get my stuff from Doc. These are at IKEA and they're $15. You should totally put one on the top of your bookshelf as your hair light.
Yes. How much are they?
$15.
I'll send it to you. Grab me one.
I'll just give it to you.
I did get a good question here. Really good question. I'm so confused. How come you guys are drinking alcohol? Didn't the Bible say you should be sober?
I mean, I'm perfectly sober right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, So the Bible does say you should be. The Bible says you should be sober, but the Bible doesn't say that drinking is a sin. And one drink of alcohol is not going to make you not sober. Two drinks of alcohol for the right man will also not render you not sober. Sobriety is a spectrum, even in Judaism.
Yeah, the typical the ancient way of interpreting this particular area actually is I have actually covered this concept in one of my tobacco videos. Drinking is not forbidden, and even being drunk specifically is not forbidden, but being a drunkard, that is to say, and you'll find this as a consistent theme throughout all of the Bible, any addictive behavior is usually bad behavior, right? Just think of all the bad things that usually Christians, shy away from and condemn as sinful. Porn, well, that's addictive behavior. Alcoholism, that's addictive behavior. Chain smoking, addictive behavior. Like, all of the bad things are just addictive behavior. And so as long as you can have a drink and control your intake, have the discipline to maintain a 1 drink per hour. Like, for me, a 1 drink an hour is where I stay. If I go a little bit above that, then I start to rock a buzz. And so I try, 1 drink an hour, and I take my sweet time with it. And so, but I know, but for, other people, simply tasting alcohol will put them over the edge.
Right.
In which case, then it's not for you. And to you, it is sin, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You just can't impose that same degree of stringency on everybody just because it's a problem for one person.
So they further explain their understanding is you're not supposed to give spiritual guidance under the influence. That's the understanding that they have. So in Judaism, which again, whenever we're talking about the Bible, we have to first operate under the understanding that Jesus and the apostles were first and foremost observant Jews. Almost every religious ceremony, especially on holidays, involves wine and scriptural teaching. Like, those two kind of go hand in hand in Judaism. And then especially even on Sukkot, which is one of the highest of all holidays, and by far the most joyous of all holidays. That's one where God even specifies that you may indulge in hard liquor specifically, is what he singles out there, because you are supposed to be joyful, and even Judaism acknowledges that alcohol maybe not as intrinsically part of being joyful, but it can be. Again,
I enjoy the taste.
It's a person by person basis, because there are some people that it is a serious problem for, but for those that it's not a serious problem for, certainly take joy in it whenever there's occasion for joy. But certainly, again, if it's something that somebody struggles with, I would probably recommend grape juice over wine, for their personal sake.
And we do that all, at the Passover Seder. We made sure to have sparkling grape juice for those who were not comfortable at our Passover Seder. And, we usually get a couple that are that feel that way. Perfectly fine. We want to make sure we respect that boundary. But yeah, that particular stringency, though, to be sober when giving spiritual guidance, specifically in its context, synagogues used to have a different role in their society. Today, they don't have that same level of authority that they used to. A synagogue used to actually be a civil court of law. And so rabbis were frequently referred to as lawyers, and then your head rabbis were judges. And you would have 3 in the synagogue that were judges. And so anytime you had any kind of civil dispute or some sort of issue, problem, legally speaking, the Torah is a law document. And so you have to approach it as such a lot of times. And so a judge was not allowed to be seated and be giving halacha under the influence of alcohol while pronouncing some sort of judgment in a civil court of law, which a synagogue operated as. Nowadays, that's not the case at all. We have our own separate courts of law in America that are not religiously driven. Whereas back then, especially in the first century, Israel was allowed to have its own internal religious court of law, barring the death penalty, which belonged to Rome. And so when you see Paul talking about that, he's specifically talking about the way that a court of law should work in the synagogue versus the way that we would recognize a court of law. It's a completely different setup than what we're used to. But that, that's not to say you can't have a drink and have a Bible teaching or something like that. It's more to say that you are not allowed to be a judge and pronounce a judgment whilst under the influence.
Yep. And it's funny, a follow-up to that, they actually asked someone asked, does that relate to the 2 or 3 gathering together?
Yeah, a little bit. The 2 or 3 gathering is a halachic language. And that is to say, if 2 or 3 rule in the same manner to pronounce a judgment, because you need 2 or 3 witnesses to pronounce any judgment, the whole gathered in my name, I am there amongst with them. That is to say that if you two as judges agree to make this a law or to judge in a particular manner, then I am with you or in agreement with you in that particular area. And that's common Hebrew speak. The tzitzit, for example, can act as a witness against you. And there are 4 of them, right? Because you have 4 corners. And so there's more than enough witnesses to act against you in any sin. And so if you have tzitzit on your tassels and you sin, then you could be drawn into heaven one day and it'll be like, well, your tzitzit bear witness against you because they were there when you sinned. And so there's your judgment kind of thing. It's a very common language device used in Judaism.
Yep. And I got a question. Favorite Passover meal?
Matzah brai.
Matzah brai, really?
Easy day. All 7 days, matzah brai.
For real,
I
can't do matzah brai that much.
I make a mean scrambled egg, dog.
Okay, so question: how do you do it? Because so Faith got somebody else's recipe this year because this is her first year ever making it. And so I'm used to moms. You're used to moms, right? We both grew up having moms. And so this one was like more matzah than scrambled egg. And I was just like, it was not what I'm used to. But apparently people eat matzah brai that way. Do you eat it that way? That's what I'm asking.
So,
or do you do like scrambled eggs with some matzah in it?
What I do is I make at least 3 scrambled eggs, and I do it the Gordon Ramsay way, right? On the heat, off the heat, constantly whisking. You salt after it's done. Yeah, I do it. Yeah, properly with sour cream. Just a spoonful of sour cream in there at the very end to fluffen. Anyway, so once all that's done, try that one day. Just at the very end, right? When you remove it from the heat, there's still heat in the pan, right? So you want to cool the eggs down just a little bit. Spoonful of sour cream right in there. Keep whisking. Do your thing. Then salt. It'll be cool enough to eat. Perfect. And it's nice and fluffy. Anyway, I immediately put just like a corner piece of the matzah, like I break off the corner, crumble it on top as like breadcrumbs kind of thing. Break the matzah in half and serve the 3 eggs scrambled on top of the half of matzah.
No, that's classy.
And it's very good that way.
I have to try that now.
It is like, I feel like Gordon Ramsay when I do it, because like you plate it and it looks good and you sprinkle it on top and it's like gorgeous, and you put like paprika, you sprinkle a little paprika on the top for decoration as a garnish. That's a matzah brai right there. Yes. Smoked paprika.
For me, it's probably just the basic like matzah and peanut butter, or matzah and Nutella.
Oh, Nutella's so good. It goes so good on matzah. I don't eat matzah plain at all, but matzah brai, like eggs, paprika, oh man, that every day.
So I actually got a good question here from Random Chris 83. How will you know, or how will Israel know when the Messiah comes? Will it be the Sanhedrin or Eliyahu tradition? Um, so, and this is something I've been wanting to talk about for a little bit too. And I know it's getting late; we should probably wrap up here soon. But just to really quickly touch on the subject, I'm seeing a lot lately here within Christianity where they are shifting their focus from the Catholic Church. You know, the belief used to be that the Antichrist would come out of the Catholic Church, and so now they're shifting the focus to Orthodox Judaism, right? Because whoever the Jews say is the Messiah, that's the Antichrist. And we don't have enough time left tonight to really outline exactly how incorrect that is. Any Messiah that the Jews would believe in is not going to be a Messiah that would qualify as the Antichrist, given what we know the Antichrist will be like. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, Jesus speaks of the abomination that causes desolation. This is a reference to Antiochus Epiphanes, who persecuted the Jewish people and outlawed the Torah. So this is not a Messiah that the Jewish people are going to follow, because they hold hard and fast to Deuteronomy 13, where any prophet who tries to lead you away from the commandments of God is a false prophet. Okay, that's their litmus test. So the two can never, there's no convergence between the two. It can never happen and will never happen. But I think the Jews will recognize the Messiah when he comes. At this point, Christianity and Judaism are waiting for the same Messiah, whereas Judaism, even since the first century, has been waiting for the Son of David, and still are today. Whereas Christianity is now still waiting for the Son of David after having already experienced and accepted the Son of Joseph. So both Jews and Christians are waiting for the conquering King Messiah to come. And so they'll recognize him the same way that Christians may or may not recognize him. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of Christians that don't recognize him because of how thoroughly Jewish he looks. And they'll probably recognize him, but it'll be kind of a confusing, well, I thought he wouldn't be like that, you know, but it'll still be a recognition.
My Jesus eats bacon.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's funny. So Ashira Rose posted a video kind of along the same subject line, more distinguishing the difference between, you know, the Greek Jesus and the Hebrew Yeshua. And so I made the statement. I'm surprised nobody's like jumps down my throat about it yet. And I'm going to say it here. And for my followers who know me, you'll know what I mean when I say this. But I said, Yeshua is the Messiah. Jesus is the Antichrist.
Oh.
But
on that bombshell, we're out of here.
Right. We're just going to dip out now. But I mean, you know, like I said, my followers know what I mean by that, and that's that the Jesus that is taught in Christianity is one who has abolished the Torah, thereby making him an Antichrist.
Even gotten rid of the idea of the Jewish people as the chosen people. He's thoroughly Greek in nature. If Antichrist simply just means anti-Messiah, which it is what it should be,
right?
Really, anybody who is against the Messiah would be anti-Messiah.
If it's a nullification of God's covenant with Israel in favor of the Gentile nations, if it's a nullification of the Torah in favor of pagan traditions, there are any number of ways I could characterize what is essentially taught by the Christian church was accomplished by this Jesus, then yes, that would make him the Antichrist.
Anti-Messiah, anti-Messianic.
The anti-Messiah. Whereas what we know and can read from Scripture about Yeshua, the Hebrew, the Jewish Yeshua, is much more in line with what would have been accomplished and established by the Messiah.
Yeah, so really the Antichrist is this false image of Yeshua.
Right, which there's that's its own discussion that I have to have with you at another point. So me and Dad had that discussion, and it goes deep into this well of like rabbit hole concerning the whole Satan and the misappropriation of the term Lucifer, and it's a deep well of a conversation. But we'll have it.
I still got to read that article you sent me.
Please do.
Yeah.
And I think a couple of my followers actually have read it also, because I told them I would post it up. I referenced it in a live one day, and then I posted it. I think the link may still be in my bio for anybody who is curious to read it. But yeah, definitely read through. It's long, so you may have to read it in parts. I had to read it in parts because I read it while at work, so I have a lot of time to just sit and read.
I'm jobless now, so at some point I'll find time for it.
You're a dependent. I keep forgetting that.
Yeah, no, I'm job hunting, but currently jobless. And so right now my job is to cook and clean, which perfectly fine with doing, by the way.
Right. I'm sure she appreciates it.
Oh man, my cooking.
Right.
Like what I do during the day is just watch Gordon Ramsay all day. And
right. And steak TikTok.
Yeah. Oh man, I can't remember that guy's name who does the cooking on TikTok, but phenomenal.
Right. Oh, so somebody asked, does being a theologian not pay? So
not yet.
I love that people just assume we do this professionally.
Pretty close. I mean, we went to school for this. It's just there's no jobs out there for TikTok does not pay much for teaching this.
This is why, guys, actually, this is why I've been pushing the Patreon pretty hard. We do want to get paid to do this, and we want to get paid to do this much more frequently. We want to be able to spend our days doing nothing but making content for you guys. If I could wake up at a reasonable hour, like 9 in the morning instead of ungodly early like I have to now, and then do nothing but make content until 9 at night, or be working on editing or studying for new content and stuff like that, like I would do that day in and day out if I could. And
the reason for that is this is not common content. I don't even like using the word content. The knowledge that we teach is not common enough. And our goal is to make this knowledge that we think should be super common more common, because it's not. If I were to ask you to name 5 resources, Brad, on what we teach, it's hard to come up with 5. I can definitely do 3, but like 5? And so, yeah. And not almost none of them are super Christian friendly at all. So, so our goal is to be able to take like all of this knowledge that we've accrued over many years through many sources, and try to make it way more common. And, if it changes the world, then awesome. We're going to do our part. But what we do, this takes a lot of work. And so that's why we'd like to get compensated for it, because we spend most of our days at work. And so we only get like an hour or 2 a day to prepare a lot of this stuff. And it's just not enough time. And so if this could replace our current income to a point where we could still live, not sacrificing a whole lot and live with the necessities, and then teach this, then we're good. And then you guys will have a better, a more steady stream of learning that would be more available to the world. Pass it out to your friends. It's more Christian friendly. It hits all the, and you wouldn't have to go searching for hours on your own to find this stuff. It can all be in one area. Whereas we did all the searching for years and for hours for all this stuff. And so that's why. That's why we if we wrote a book, we'd be compensated, but we're not writing a book, so we're doing this.
And we want to, and we hope, the prayer is that, which that actually kind of is my prayer for this counting of the Omer season, is that this can grow into like a serious ministry, whereupon we can actually hire other people. Because one of the hardest things about being Torah observant in a world and in a nation that is not, is it's hard to find jobs that are understanding when you have to take off for the Jewish holidays, because they don't align with everybody else's holiday. And it's hard to find a boss who will understand you taking off for Shabbat. So if this is a ministry that we could expand to the point of employing other people, so that you're already going to have those days off because you work for a company that already is aligned with, with those holidays.
Yeah.
It's a ministry towards that end. And it's, it doesn't take much. I mean, the lowest membership is $1, which the ironic part, and I bring this up all the time, is like, if just half of my followers paid $1 membership, we could actually both quit our jobs and actually dedicate 100% of our time to doing this.
Yeah. For just $1 a month. And I know it sounds like we're not asking a lot. For some people, it's a lot. And for us, every single dollar counts. Like,
yes,
even if you gave 10 cents, we're forever grateful for that 10 cents. It doesn't matter. Because, at the end of the day, that's your hard-earned money, and you put that where you want it. And so if it comes to us, that's just a huge blessing, no matter how big or small.
Let's see. So just real quick, someone said they would pay money to watch us argue with non-messianic rabbis. I don't have anything to argue with them about, really.
Well,
nor would I ever try and attempt that.
That's what I was going to say, is I am not ordained as a rabbi, and I know what it takes to get to that point, and I would not want to go toe to toe with an ordained rabbi. I mean, you and I have been doing this for over 30 years between the two of us. And they would still absolutely whip us into shape.
Right. Just so I'm actually friends with another TikToker who is not a rabbi yet, but he is soon to receive smicha. And in the conversations that he and I have, and we don't really have a whole lot of disagreement, but like, he brings up stuff that like I've definitely never heard of. And it's just like, oh, I had never considered that point. Wow. And so it's like, no, I would never argue with that guy, and he's not even ordained yet.
Yeah, no, they read, like, they know 6 languages fluently.
Yeah,
and
understand,
so
being a rabbi is not the equivalent of being a pastor. And I know that's going to be a hit to a lot of pastors. A lot of pastors think that they are an equal to a rabbi. They are not. That's not to belittle what it takes to be a pastor. There definitely is a lot of schooling that goes into being a pastor, but roughly double and a half of that amount of schooling goes into being a rabbi. So they are not equals. To be an ordained rabbi takes, the better part of 25 years of legitimate scholarly accredited schooling,
Yeah.
So it's not something you just up and decide to do one day and sign up for the classes.
Yeah.
Somebody also wants me to do an interview with Dad. I would love to do an interview with Dad.
Oh, that'd be cool.
I don't know if he would like do, maybe, I don't know. He's weird about social media.
Yeah. How old are you guys? You both look young. This is probably in reference to when I said between the two of us, there's 30 years of experience, a little over 30. So we're both almost 30 in age. And then we've both been doing this, for me, about 11 years now. And that's plus my 3.5 years at Liberty.
For me, it's like the better part of the last 18 years.
Yeah, something.
I've been practicing this.
So between the two of us,
when I hit my young adult years, I had this wild streak of rebellion. But yeah,
yeah, and we all do that, I guess. But yeah, so between the two of us, about 30 years experience, and then you add the college on top of that, and then so he's been doing it longer than me by about 5 or 6 years longer than me. But like I said, I make up for that by having gone to a university. And so that's where I made up my 5 years loss. And so now we're peers.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You went to college a student, and you came back a peer.
And what does it mean to be Torah observant? So the first 5 books of the Bible, Genesis through Deuteronomy, there are 613 commands to be Torah observant. We like to say Torah practicing. It's more like a practice, like medicine. It's constantly evolving. But it means to maintain adherence to the law of Moses as much as we are able to in our individual capacities. Yeah, that's it. Like we keep kosher, we keep the biblical holidays, and so oftentimes we'll refer to ourselves as Torah keeping Christians because we
Torah
still believe
practicing.
Yeah,
I try to use practicing more.
Yeah, because like I said before,
it seems a semantical difference, but it's really not.
Yeah, no one is perfectly Torah observant. There was one who was, and we call him the Messiah.
Right.
And he is the model by which we strive to be, and that's why we practice.
I also got earlier, and this is just a real quick side note entirely, and I've been getting a lot, and I'm sure you have too, actually, requests to do videos on the holidays and how to observe them. So that is potentially an idea for a series we could work on, because that's not a TikTok series thing. That's definitely going to be like a YouTube series thing.
Yeah, we'll call it the Machzor.
Hey.
For those of you that don't know Hebrew, you'll find out when you see the videos.
But I don't want to keep you up all night, man, and I gotta get to bed myself.
Yeah,
so this is probably an okay place to call it.
Yeah, I think I'm good. I'm gonna start winding the house down, be a good housewife.
But to all of my followers, if you haven't already, definitely go and follow Seamus. He is we are alternate media. So he's the colleague that I reference in a lot of my videos or in a lot of the messages and comments that you guys see me post. I feel like most of you should already know this by now because we've been in enough videos together at this point. But yeah, so definitely go give him a follow.
Yeah, I don't have nearly as many followers as you, but still, my guys, we're the same. Check him out, follow him. I got like 3,500, a little over 3,500.
You grew a little bit there.
I did a video on the Sabbath day, and for some reason it exploded, and I got 200 overnight. I don't know what I did, but
that's a good topic.
It was funny is like I did that video and then left for the field for 5 days. And so when I came back
and suddenly had like 1,500 more followers.
Yeah, I was like, oh my goodness. So I'm like scrolling through like, holy cow, what did I do? Yeah, usually when I leave for that long, I don't have very many notifications at all. But yeah, my followers, same thing. We work together. We're a partnership. We are alternate media. Check out our Patreon. If you feel led to give, we appreciate it. Help us in our step towards publishing a book one day between the two of us, and then adding more video series to the channel, so we can do different subjects throughout the week, and give a video every single day would be super cool, would be really beneficial.
For those of you on mine, just real quick, because I got somebody asking his TikTok name. It is exactly like mine, except instead of Brad at the end, it is Seamus, spelled Seamus. Or if you are watching my live stream and he is on the right hand side of the screen, his name is literally right there on his chest, so you could just click that.
Oh, I see. It's like right
here.
There's
literally a link to your name over your chest if you're on the right hand side of the screen.
I was about to write it on a piece of paper. Make sure you spell altar correctly. It's altar, not altar, altar. Yeah.
ALTARNATE media, Seamus.
Yeah. And then Seamus. I get that a lot. I just tell people my name is Sean. Because they can spell Sean SEAN, but they don't know Seamus is SEAM. So
Americans.
Not all of them, but yeah, usually. Yeah, so yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up, man.
All right, man. You have a good night.
Yeah, we'll do this again sometime. Have a good night, and to everybody else, Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem.